Belichick official yesterday. This morning, Brett McMurphy reporting that Rich Rod is to West Virginia, leaving Jacksonville State, and Dan Mullen is at UNLV. For a coaching carousel that we didn't think would be interesting, that's three pretty interesting names. Let's bring in Connor O'Gara, Brownie.
Yeah, he is Saturday Down South at CJ O'Gara on Twitter. We love talking with him. The idea was to have Connor on to talk about the greatest moment in Indiana football coming up, and we'll get to that. But the coaching news has kind of usurped that. Sorry about that. Connor, how are you today?
I'm doing well, and I'll take it because an interesting coaching carousel for my money is like a month's worth of content, and in an 8-month off season, it's something that I love talking about. So look, I will gladly put aside my alma mater actually doing something on the football field if it means talking about coaches that people know and care about.
We'll get to it. We'll get to your alma mater doing something on the football field. We can't have you on the show and not do that. I don't even know where to start, but let's start with Belichick. I mean, I can't imagine. I was having dinner with a friend last night, and he was like, go back 5 years and convince Bill Belichick he's the coach at North Carolina. I mean, how that has turned is pretty remarkable.
How many times have we made the joke when we see a coaching search in a list of candidates, and we're just like, what is this school, what is this program doing by thinking that they're going to get Belichick too? They're going to call him up. They're going to call it Vince Lombardi. Like, yeah. This puts all of that to bed. You can never make that joke again because UNC hired Bill freaking Belichick. We can never do that. And so I think it's fascinating because clearly it was not unanimous behind closed doors. And every report that came out was, yeah, there's kind of a difference in opinion with what the boosters are seeking. But ultimately what had to win out was just, wait a minute. Bill Belichick is interested enough to coach UNC football. We can't say no to this, even if we think there's a very high likelihood that it doesn't work out. And this coach, who's going to be 73 years old at the start of the season, isn't exactly built for the long haul. But you kind of owe it to yourself just to have this situation play out, a situation that nobody could have forecasted as recently as 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think it's really risky, Connor, on Belichick's side. I thought it was a little desperate on his side. I think for North Carolina, hey, look, you finally have committed to football. And I think if it doesn't work out, I think they can still sell that to guys moving forward. I didn't think Deion was going to work. I was completely wrong on that, at least through 2 years, and I can admit that. I don't think this is going to work at the highest level, but hell, who knows? What do you think?
I don't think it's going to work. The talent acquisition is the most troubling thing. I was reading the story in The Athletic about how Bill Belichick, when he was fired with the Patriots, they hadn't re-signed a draft pick from the first 3 rounds since 2013. To me, in a time where talent acquisition is everything, how you evaluate talent still matters. And I don't know that I trust Bill Belichick from a talent evaluation standpoint. As crazy as that is to say out loud, you still have to hit those key decisions. And who are you evaluating at quarterback? Who are you evaluating to run your offense? Because last I checked, handing the offense over to Matt Patricia and Joe Judge with their very limited offensive background wasn't exactly a smart move, and ultimately was part of his undoing in New England. So decisions like that still matter. As great as it is to have someone with 8 Super Bowl rings, something that Jim Phillips will undoubtedly brag about at ACC Media Days and claim that the ACC has the best coaches in college football just because Bill Belichick came on board, it is still just a hard scenario to forecast with anything other than, yeah, they tried this and it didn't really work out, and it had kind of a Herm Edwards type feel to it.
You'll get your first Bill Belichick North Carolina news conference, which will be fascinating. 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central today, as he's officially introduced at the news conference in Chapel Hill, or Chapel Bill as it's being labeled on ESPN. Connor O'Gara is with us here. $20 million NIL, though. Quarterback's got to be your first priority, right? You got to go get your Tom Brady. Is there anybody in the portal right now that you think's a slam dunk for him to go get?
No. I mean, like,
is there a Cam Ward out there?
Look, maybe there is, and I shouldn't rule that out. I mean, let's look at 5 of the the Heisman Trophy finalists of the last 2 years were portal guys, 4 of which came from this specific window. The only one who didn't was Jaden Daniels. He was a February transfer. He ends up enrolling at LSU in March. But, you look at the college football playoffs, 6 of the 12 quarterbacks, former portal quarterbacks. So, yeah, there's always that possibility that I would never rule that out. But at the same time, UNC had Drake May and Sam Howell. They had the quarterback. That's never really been the issue there. It's been more about what are the pieces around him looking like and what does it look like at a basketball school, let's call it what it is, when you're not in contention. Because those fans, all of a sudden, they get distracted in a hurry. And that's all of a sudden an uphill battle that you're fighting in late October. And that to me is going to be an issue moving forward for UNC.
I know you can't do it right now, Connor, but why not pay Quinn Ewers $5 million to leave Texas and come to North Carolina? Because Texas doesn't want him back.
I'm not convinced of that. I think he's gone to the NFL for what it's worth. I think he'll have enough people that look at his body of work and go, yeah, let's see what we can do with this, despite the fact that there's some of it you just don't like. And, you guys know this, seeing it in person, you just see these passes he throws that just flutter and they stay up. And you're wondering, where is this guy who once looked like the ball just popped out of his hands so effortlessly? And go back to that 2021 or that 2022 game that he played against Bama where he gets off to that great start. And you're just seeing these great things. And I think that there will still be an NFL market for him. I agree. If I were a school like UNC, I'd be throwing that out there. How about the idea that Damian Harris threw out there, the former Alabama running back who's now doing great things, CBS Sports and at The Athletic? Alabama, Quinn Ewers, make that happen. Fascinating idea when you consider their backgrounds and what it would take to make that happen. But yeah, look, Quinn Ewers is going to have a variety of opportunities. I tend to think the NFL will be the one that he leans towards.
Connor O'Gara is with us Saturday down south at CJ O'Gara. I don't know. Rich Rodriguez is leaving my school to go to West Virginia. I find it interesting that he's at West Virginia. I think I find Dan Mullen a little more interesting because I feel like this is Rodriguez's final stop. I do not feel the same about Dan Mullen. I feel like he's taken the UNLV job to try to parlay that into one more run at glory.
I think so too. I think he loved the media gig. I really do. And it seems a little bit desperate on the surface when you consider his lack of background in that region of the country. And he's going to move all the way to Vegas to be able to coach football again. This guy that has a really good life. I mean, let's be honest, like lives in, Lake Oconee right there, in Georgia. And I remember talking to him a couple of years ago. And he said, I had an hour-long conversation with him. And one of the things he said before we started the interview was, yeah, I mean, I do a couple of radio hits in the offseason, but basically for 8 months, I get to do whatever I want. He's going to Europe with his wife and living on that buyout money, the $12 million that Florida gave him on top of the millions he's earned before that. And he had a good life and didn't need to do anything. He was doing the Thursday night gig with Matt Berry and had a really good situation on ESPN. So he didn't need to go back into coaching for anything other than ego and possibly the notion that he can still do it at a high level. And a job like that makes a little bit more sense when you consider the resources, you consider the success that Barry Odom just had there, when a lot of people thought, I don't know if that guy's going to be running his own program again. And all of a sudden, Barry Odom back in the college football landscape as one of these up-and-comers. So Dan Mullen trying to follow that same path.
So because I asked you about Quinn Ewers, I got to ask you about Jalen Milroe. I think Milroe will end up going in the NFL draft. I kind of believe it's a mistake. I think he's another one of these guys that could come out, maybe go play for a guy like Lincoln Riley and make a lot of money. And we've seen the ceiling for Jalen Milroe, and it's extremely high. And if he could put that together for 10, 11, 12 games, he could be the number one overall guy. I don't know what your thoughts are on Jalen Milroe. I think most of us agree that Milroe's last snap has already been taken in Tuscaloosa.
I would tend to agree with that. I wouldn't rule out anything. And I don't know how much this day and age of NIL and that sort of influence could impact that. With a situation like Garrett Nussmeier at LSU, I'm not sure how much that made him feel like it was a safe decision to come back to LSU with the uncertainties of basically like not being a first-round pick in the NFL and how difficult that road can be to become a starting quarterback. But I think with Milroe, the question I have to be asking myself as I make this decision is not related to money or anything like that, because that'll be there if you go to the NFL, it'll be there if you come back to Alabama, or if you choose to go elsewhere. It's where am I going to become a better quarterback? Because he needs to become a better quarterback. He just does. And I was a Milroe guy, and I predicted him to win the Heisman Trophy coming into this season. But you saw the bad, and the bad is still really, really bad. If you're ignoring the bad and just doing the old, as I like to used to say, the Christian Hackenberg thing, where you put together 6 minutes of highlights and convince yourself that he's going to be a statue quarterback, and I mean statue quarterback, like they're going to build a statue, not he's a statue in the pocket, then what are we doing here? I mean, like that just ignores too much of the sample size with Milroe. And I do think that if I'm him, I'm asking, where's the situation where I can come back and actually become a better quarterback? Because if that's not the NFL, then I would long consider returning to college. Maybe that's at Alabama, maybe that's not, but he's got a lot of different options to consider before he makes a huge decision about his future.
I've learned there's a lot of ways to look at when you rework rosters. This week, on social media, I said Alabama's rebuilding on a 9-3 season, and I got things like retooling, reshaping, restructuring. It's all rebuilding to me. They're trying to build this the way Kalen DeBoer's teams usually look, and it wasn't that way last year. Where do you see Alabama moving forward right now? 9-3 now. Are they back in closer into the conversation next year, or do you think maybe there's another step down?
So much of that is going to depend on the quarterback situation. So much of that is going to depend on what they do in the portal. I mean, that's a weird thing to say about Alabama, but it's true. And that's how you retool, rebuild, however you want to phrase it. But in this day and age, we have to acknowledge when teams are exposed to the 30-day transfer window. We have to acknowledge what that can do to a roster that has talent like Alabama, that still had, it wasn't a bare cupboard, all right? Like it was still a place, obviously, with talent and guys like, your friend Tyler Booker coming back and Malachi Moore, even during the ups and downs that he had. You still want a guy like that back in your defense, Deontay Lawson, who obviously gets hurt, but still, they had those pieces. But you still lose some of that depth. And when you lose a guy of Caleb Downs' caliber, yeah, it's hard not to look around. Isaiah Bond, somebody that was an impact player for Texas, it's hard not to look around and go, well, what's it going to look like if we can retool? I still am a believer in Kalen DeBoer, and I am still a believer that this coaching staff can add the right pieces to get Alabama into the playoff next year. Now, is that going to be a guarantee and will it be smooth sailing? No, there's not necessarily any guarantees in this day and age of the SEC, because when you see Alabama play down to competition that it usually doesn't play down to, you have to ask those questions. But I'm still a believer that DeBoer in year 2, based on his track record, will be able to make those improvements, and they'll be able to make those decisions to improve that roster.
Connor O'Gara is with us at CJ O'Gara on social media. Saturday Down South. He's a proud graduate of the fine university in Bloomington, the IU Hoosiers. They play the big.
I thought you were gonna say University of Indiana. We're gonna have some problems there.
Nope. Okay, I would never insult you that way. Indiana University, the IU Hoosiers. Actually, I was going to, but I stopped myself. The biggest game in school history. Why do these teams not play? Is this one of those Notre Dame looks down their noses at their in-state institution there and they refuse to play them? Why do they never play?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know, because Purdue plays them all the time.
Yeah.
That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, you guys have not played them since 1990, I don't think.
Yeah, Indiana's non-conference scheduling is a joke. That's probably what it comes down to, if we're being 100% honest. Go back and look at the years of Indiana non-conference scheduling, and you'll see a whole lot of Akron. You'll see Bowling Green, Towson. I remember the first road game that I covered for Indiana football was at Western Kentucky, interestingly enough. At Western Kentucky when they were in the midst of like the nation's longest losing streak. So they don't exactly load up on teams like Notre Dame that have actual history associated, albeit 20th century history, not 21st century history. So that's probably got something to do with it, but it's easily the biggest game in program history. I mean, the last 6 games that Indiana football has played have been the biggest games in program history. And it's all gravy from here for IU fans. And they kind of know that. If they went into South Bend and won that game, that would follow Marcus Freeman forever. That's a game. You talk about can't lose games. You cannot lose that if you're the head coach at Notre Dame. That is the type of thing that would make us go, Marcus Freeman's got a little bit too much Ryan Day in him. Where are the big time wins coming from? I don't think Indiana's going to be able to move the football against that defense. A secondary that, along with Texas, might be the best in all of college football with Xavier Watts. And I think that Curtis Rourke is going to struggle with the blitz packages that Al Golden will dial up with a little bit of extra time. So I'm not optimistic as an IU grad. But if they do win, that will have huge ramifications in the Hoosier State.
I do agree that Al Golden's defense is going to give Rourke a little bit of trouble. I do think he's 100% healthy now, which I think is big for Indiana. I've got a feeling that Indiana matches up well with him, and I agree. Like, I like Marcus Freeman. He looks the part. He's doing a great job recruiting. I just don't know how good of a coach he is, and we're about to find out.
Yeah, we're about to find out, and who knows? Maybe it's going to set the stage for him to get that Ohio State job if that becomes available, which I do believe it will. If Ohio State comes up short of a national championship, would that be their primary target?
They got to win it all?
Ohio State's got to win it all, or else Ryan Day is gone.
Whoa.
Yeah, I firmly believe that. I've
my
never
gosh.
said that. You guys,
Oh my
okay,
God.
I'm not that guy.
No.
Yes. I 100% believe they could lose the national championship on a last-second controversial play that doesn't go their way. And I still believe that if Ross Bjork has that button to hit on the Tuesday after the national championship, he hits that button.
That is amazing.
I wouldn't sleep for a month if I were Ryan Day.
Well, right, yeah, no pressure at all.
Look at Dunaway.
When was the last time Ryan Day
Connor,
slept?
we
let's
had-
be honest.
I know.
We had the discussion, and who was it? We had Josh Pate on, and we asked him if, I think it was me that asked him, if Ohio State was to lose this game against Tennessee, I don't personally think he should be fired. He's a hard guy to like. What do you think, Pate? And Pate was like, I don't think he should be fired either. I think it's kind of laughable, but I have talked to very credible people that say if he loses this game, he is out. But you're taking it a step further, and we know you're very credible. I mean, have you heard this?
I mean, Connor, you know the numbers we get on social media when Taylor clips out a piece
That's right.
and throws it out there.
Ask Ohio State fans. Am I wrong?
Well, I'm not. Look, if fans drove the bus, people would be getting fired each and every week. But have you heard behind the scenes, legitimately from a credible source, if he does not win a national championship, he is out, or is that just your gut feel?
No, that's my gut feel.
Okay.
That's let the record show. And I'm talking to Bobby Carpenter in 40 minutes, so maybe I'll have to ask Bobby, like, hey, what's up? Like, have you heard anything related to this specifically? But they know it. I mean, goodness gracious, you can't have that game against Michigan and move forward with anything but a national championship. Wow. You just can't. Not with this roster, not with the $20 million that they invested into that team. And the dynamics of this are important as well, right? If Gene Smith is still the athletic director at Ohio State, I'm not saying that. Do I think Ross Bjork took the job as Ohio State athletic director to just sit on his hands and let Ryan Day be the coach that defines his tenure there? No way. Absolutely no way. If they come up short of a national championship, I do believe that Ryan Day will be fired.
The dude does have, and I'm a guy with bags under my eyes. He's got bad bags under his eyes. By the time we get to January, it may be nothing but bags.
Bad bags, bad beard too. Like the beard that Ryan Day sports, I think is part of his public image and all the different hair dye that he uses in it. He should be a clean-shaven guy. He should have been a clean-shaven guy 2 years ago after he lost consecutive games to Michigan. I would have made that pivot then, even as a bearded guy. But now kind of seeing it and seeing how sad he looks with the beard, like that look that he had, the day's look into the distance as
crazy,
his players were fighting with the the flag and all that stuff. It's bad times, and I think it'd be a fascinating vacancy that would have the coaching carousel spinning, just like Nick Saban's retirement did last year.
We can tell you love Ryan Day.
Just not my favorite guy. Not my favorite guy. He is epitomizing what Jim Harbaugh said about him, born on third base. I mean, how can you deny it at this point with what they've done with that team and how disappointing it's been? Because it wasn't even just the Michigan game. Like, there are Ohio State fans that were thinking this team is just not playing at the level that it should for all the pieces that are there, all the hand-picked pieces, and the defense that return, which is still really good and I think is going to give them some problems, I think, Tennessee in that opener. And for what it's worth, I have Tennessee losing that game to Ohio State, so Ohio State advancing to get the rematch against Oregon. I have them beating Oregon and then losing in the semifinal, and then Ryan Day would still get fired.
All right, Connor O'Gara, Saturday Down South at CJ O'Gara. Thank you for the time, Connor. That was very interesting.
Gentlemen, appreciate it.
All right, buddy. JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline is where we found Connor.